Unit 2, Lesson 4, Understanding Motivation. Unit 2, Lesson 4, Vocabulary. After this presentation, we should be able to understand what motivation is, identify the different types of motivation that apply to sport and exercise, identify 3 general views of motivation, and be able to define achievement motivation and competitiveness, and indicate why they are important. I'm sure some of you have seen posters like these in classrooms and offices, or seeing them online as memes or GIFs on your social media sites. Motivation can be defined simply as the direction and intensity of one's effort. But motivation varies by person, by situation, and even by circumstance. But for everybody, it's guided by the components of motivation. That's the direction of effort and the intensity of the effort. Direction of effort refers to whether an individual seeks out, approaches, or is attracted to certain situations. And the intensity of effort refers to how much effort a person puts forth in a particular situation. The 3 approaches to motivation are the trait-centered view, the situation-centered view, or an interactional view. Beginning with the trait-centered view, it's also called the participant-centered view. This is where motivated behavior is primarily a function of individual characteristics. The personality, the needs, the goals of individuals are the primary determinants of motivation behavior. The situation-centered view, however, is different. This is where the motivation level is determined primarily by the situation you're in. Different situations can influence motivation differently, either positively or negatively, or both. An interactional view, also called the participant by situation. This is where motivation results from the intersection of the trait-centered view and the situation-centered view. The best way to understand motivation is to consider both the person involved and the situation they're involved in and how those two interact with one another. And so looking more closely at the participant by situation interactional model of motivation, there were personal factors like your personality, your needs, your interests, and your goals. Those affect the situation and participants' interaction. Situational factors that can affect you is the leader or coaching style, facility attractiveness, even your team win-loss record, how well the team's doing. All of those situational factors can affect the participant by situation interaction and therefore affecting the participant's motivation. We're going to look at how to build motivation with 5 guidelines. The interactional model of motivation has important implications for teachers, coaches, trainers, exercise leaders, and program administrators. And with it, there are 5 guidelines of building motivation. The first is we should consider both situations and traits in motivating people. The second is understanding people's multiple motives for involvement. Sometimes people get involved for multiple reasons. The third is to change the environment to enhance motivation. And the fourth is influence motivation. The fifth and final guideline is to use behavior modification to change a participant's undesirable motives, i.e., to change the situations around the negative behavior of an athlete or an exerciser. Guideline number 1 considers both situations and traits in motivating people. because motivations change throughout time. Even with the same person and the same task or objective or sport or job, the reason why somebody is competing can change. And it's very helpful to enhance motivation, but one must analyze and respond to an individual's personality and the interaction of personal and situational characteristics in order to help enhance motivation and continue to enhance motivation throughout. Guideline number 2 states that it's important to understand people's multiple motives for involvement, like getting them to remember why they started in the first place. To do this, you need to identify why people participate in physical activity, in sports, or in some type of exercise. Because people participate for more than one reason. And sometimes you might have competing motives for involvement in a sport or an exercise. You and I can have shared reasons, shared motives for participating, but we could also have unique motives for participating in sports and exercises. Differences can even be down gender or ethnic lines, even through a cultural emphasis on sport and exercise. That could even enhance and affect our motives for participation. And one way to help build motivation through Guideline 2 is to continually observe participants and monitor their motives throughout. Guideline number 3 asks one to change the environment to enhance motivation, provided both for competition purposes and recreation purposes. You can structure environments to meet the needs of all participants, either casual athletes and exercisers or serious athletes and sport exercisers. And it's important to provide multiple opportunities where you construct an environment to meet multiple needs at different times. This allows you to keep everybody active and engaged and keep their motivational levels up. It also allows you to adjust to individuals within the groups. Every person has unique motives for participating. They could be based on gender or race or ethnicity, age, physical and mental abilities, goals, and needs. And so being able to change the environment enhances the motivational aspects and levels for each individual participant. Guideline number 4 is influence motivation. And this is the type of motivation that most people are familiar with. It's the most easy to identify. It's direct motivation from coaches, from teachers, from trainers, like instilling good practice habits, pregame talks, follow through and effective feedback, post-game talks, recapping what just happened during the game or during the match. Indirect motivation can actually happen by the same group of people, by coaches, teachers, and trainers. These are the physical actions, the nonverbal gestures, the body language, and like a coach or a teacher or a trainer's treatment of others, but not directly treatment of you. The fifth and final guideline for building motivation seeks to use behavior modification to change participants' undesirable motives. Think of behavior modification as trying to correct a negative behavior before it gets out of hand. You have somebody, you have an athlete or you have an exerciser who's going down the wrong path, a negative path. Guideline 5 is to try to use behavior modifications positively to enact a positive change in that individual. The use of behavior modification techniques to change undesirable motives and strengthen weak motivation can be a powerful motivational tool. It's important when you do so to focus on the overall student, athlete, and exerciser, not the individual actions that you're seeking to change. Focus on effort, not on goals. And you might even change the aspect to focus on a team aspect and not an individual aspect. All of these are behavior modification techniques to help elicit a positive response.